Hi everyone. Today we are going to look at how we can add values in Excel for different cells or a range of cells using different functionality. We'll see sum, subtotal with some functionality and aggregate function with some functionality. So let's have a look at it quickly. So in front of us we have an Excel sheet where we have got profit and loss related accounts and we need to calculate the total of revenue, cost and profit. With this, I'm going to use a sum formula in the first example. I can just type is equal to sum, open bracket. I can select the range of cells which I want to add and then I click enter and the closing bracket, Excel can put it automatically and this is my total. The same thing, let's say for the second cost of sale, I want to add is equal to sum. For gross profit, I cannot add a range because it has got some totals in between. What will happen? Let's have a look quickly. If I select a range here, it will become 908,000 because it is adding up everything, even the totals that we did. We don't want that to happen. So here I want to select is equal to total revenue plus cost of sale. I'm adding cost of sale in this case as an accountant because my costs here are mentioned in negative values. Otherwise, if they were positive, I would have done a minus sign. So let's keep it very simple. I've taken values on net basis. So I'm adding up these values to calculate my gross profit. Now to calculate the total expenses is equal to sum, open bracket and select the range, enter, and this is how you have your total expenses. Finally, the net profit is equal to gross profit plus my total other expenses which are in negative. That's why the plus sign, and the total net profit in this case is 323,000. Same thing we can achieve it using the subtotal function. So I can write subtotal open bracket. I need to tell what kind of subtotal I want. So I want sum. So I'm going to select 9 as the value here or enter 9, comma, and then select your range. Enter. Same thing for the cost of sale. Subtotal 9, comma, range. Enter. And in gross profit, then I can use again the subtotal. That is the advantage. So I can say subtotal 9, comma, and I can select the entire range from top till the cell. So it will automatically ignore the nested subtotals. So that is the advantage here. Is equal to subtotal 9, comma, select the range, enter, and finally the net profit using the same functionality. So I can be consistent in using the subtotal function. Here I had to break it down into two different sum formulas. Finally, the aggregate function. Now if I use aggregate, I have an additional option. So first I can tell the system that I want to do sum, comma. It gives you an additional option to ignore nested, subtotal and aggregate functions, hidden rows, error values, etc. So you can choose which combination you want. So I'm going to use this third combination, number 3 combination, which will ignore hidden rows, error values, subtotals and aggregate nested functions. I'm going to select this, comma, I can select the range, so on and so forth. So I'll just enter these things very quickly here. So I'm using 9 for sum function, 3 for ignoring different set of values, and then finally the range. Now just like subtotal, I can select the entire range here. So because it has the option of ignoring the nested subtotal and aggregate functions. Let's do it quickly for the rest. And finally the net profit. So I'm using the same function for all the calculations in this column. So I've got the same net profit. Very good. Now what is the advantage of having add, subtotal and aggregate? Let's very quickly look at it. Now we're going to expand on the sheet. And in this case, what we have is we have got 3 columns, Jan, Feb, March, and I want to find out the quarter and maybe the total at this level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the totals from here. So we'll see how we can quickly add it up using the sum function. So I'm going to remove only the ones in this color. I'll leave the green color ones on because it's a plus sign. We have seen that before. Now here we can use 2 shortcuts. Alt is equal to on your keyboard, or you can go on the home tab and use the sum function to invoke the sum function calculation. Now you can do this by selecting a cell, let's say I'm going to use the first shortcut. I'm going to press Alt is equal to on my keyboard and it will select the range for me. Enter. That's how I can do it first. Second, I can go to Home tab, click on this, enter. That also does the work. And finally, maybe the better way to do it, select the entire range of rows and columns and either click on this shortcut of Home Auto Sum, or you can press Alt is equal to and it will calculate the totals of the rows and columns at the same time. So that is the advantage. So let's do that again. Alt is equal to, Alt is equal to. So this is very quick and easy to use. These are the values which are calculated immediately. What happens with these subtotals? Now for subtotals, I have taken the liberty of putting in the subtotals from this sheet and using the same formula here. Now, if I use the subtotal at the row level, so let's try. If I say subtotal 9 for sum function and then I select the range and I copy this formula down, it does not calculate the value at this one because if you remember, it will ignore the nested subtotals. So what I will do instead, now I will start combining the formula. I will use a sum function here. So I can say sum and then I can select the range here. So in this case, automatically the total will be calculated for the subtotal function which I have defined at the total revenue. Same thing I can do for the rest of the columns. So I'm going to use the shortcut, select the range, click on sum function, select the range or press Alt is equal to on your keyboard. And then finally, the last option here is the aggregate. Again, similar to subtotals, if I use the aggregate function here, then it will ignore it. I can choose to ignore nothing, so it will calculate the sum for me. But again, I'll have an issue when I'm calculating the gross profit and net profit. You can try that when you're doing this practice. Now for this example, what I'm going to use is the same sum functionality very quickly, and then the aggregates are calculated immediately for me, and then I have the total gross profit and net profit calculated. So this is how you can combine different functions. And the last option in this particular video is the errors. How do what do you do when you have errors? So very quickly in this one, what I have done for the finance, I have taken it as a formula, which is my marketing expenses divided by 10. So what happens if I have an error in the marketing expense? In this case, the sum and the subtotal are going to give errors to you, but the aggregate function will invoke the additional functionality where it can ignore the errors and still calculate the aggregate of values for the selected range. That is the advantage of aggregate. So you can choose any of these functions for your for your calculations based on how they are working and what advantages they provide. Hope you like this video. For more interesting videos, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time. Thank you and have a nice day.